Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Cabinet meeting tonight. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. There are none, everyone's here. Agenda item 2, declaration of interest. All members in attendance are reminded of the requirement to consider whether they have an interest in any matter on the agenda that needs to be disclosed, and if so, to declare the interest when the Cabinet reaches that item on the agenda. Agenda item 3, minutes of previous meeting held on the 10th of September 2020. Are they agreed? You need to put your virtual hand up, please. Thank you. That's agreed. And now we come to the public participation statement, questions, deputations and petitions. We have 5 speakers today, and each speaker has 2 minutes to either ask a question or make a statement. And I'll first call upon Mrs. Butcher, who's making a statement on the Climate Change Corporate Panel report. Mrs. Butcher, if you could unmute yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay. The climate change report is, of course, very welcome. However, I'm concerned that by focusing solely on reducing carbon emissions, we neglect to address other related aspects of environmental degradation affecting biodiversity, human health and well-being. My 2 main concerns are as follows. Firstly, the rapidly growing trend of paving over front gardens in favour of driveways with little restriction, despite government guidelines regarding porous paving, etc. This has serious implications for biodiversity, air quality, flood risk, and the character of our borough. It is likely to be accelerated by the need for charging places for electric vehicles. Secondly, air pollution produced by idling motor vehicles contributes to serious effects on health and our hard-pressed health service. The borough has addressed this in a limited way around schools. There needs to be a wider education programme with enforcement by traffic wardens. In addition, I'm concerned about air pollution produced by bonfires. I would be happy to be involved in any council discussions to assess and find solutions to these issues. Creative thinking has introduced the idea of a town orchard, planters and parklets. We need similar creativity to ameliorate the existing negative structures of our urban environment in order to make Redbridge a green, pleasant and healthy place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Butcher, for your statement there, and certainly you raise a few issues. We understand you've been involved in the public consultation activities, so you've certainly helped us shape the report, and would like to thank you for that particular effort in helping the corporate panel come to its conclusions. When deciding the scope of the corporate panel's work, the panel noted the overlap with the ongoing work of the Nature and Environment Scrutiny Task Finish Group. The panel agreed to not duplicate the work around biodiversity, and therefore heard from Councillor Donovan, the chair of the Nature and Environment Task and Finish Group. The scope of the Task and Finish Group includes quite a few of the things that you're asking for. So it's not that it hasn't been forgotten, or it has been forgotten. It hasn't. It's actually been given a place of its own, and there is another Task and Finish Group which is going to address the issues that you've raised here today. On the paving of front gardens, the planning authority, the council, has very, very limited powers in stopping homeowners from covering their front garden to facilitate car parking due to national planning policy. Under current regulations, if the surface to be covered is more than 5 square metres, planning permission will be needed for laying traditional impermeable driveways that do not provide for the water to run to a permeable area. On average, a new car is 1.8 metres wide by 4.7 metres long, which is 8.46 metres. if a new or replacement driveway of any size uses permeable or porous surfacing, which allows water to drain through such as gravel, permeable concrete, block paving, or porous asphalt, or even rainwater directed to a lawn or into a soakaway, then planning permission, unfortunately, is not required. People still need to get permission for a dropped curve and should not park in the driveway unless they have one. But the issue is that can the council do something? And it's very limited what the council can do, because we have to, we don't make the policies, we have to enforce the policies, to adhere to the policies. And that's, so certainly on the first part, the biodiversity part is taken into account, it's coming. On the other one, I think we do need to think about it, because this is what causes localized flooding. It causes a whole host of other problems, and is something that I think we all need to engage our brains on. So, thank you very much. On the air pollution, I think we're certainly looking at introducing low emission neighbourhoods. At the moment, we're currently working on introducing low emission neighbourhoods in Oakdale and Wanstead. And of course, we're also looking at our school streets as well. And we've got 3 of our schools where people can't actually drive around at the optimal time, which is of picking up and dropping off children. And that will help certainly clean up the air. It is more to be done, and we're certainly on to this. Thank you for your statement, and certainly hope you carry on working with the council into the future. Thank you very much.
Am I allowed just to ask you about this nature and environment task and whatever it was group? Because I've not heard of that. Is there a way I can get involved in that at some point?
I will make sure that we inform you of this, and we'll give you the links and certainly to feed into that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Butcher. I next call upon Vinaya Marks, asking a question again on climate change corporate panel report. Vinaya, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. It's Vanya Marks.
Vanya.
Sorry, I couldn't change my name on the thing. Yeah, in the climate change corporate panel report, which I strongly welcome, it says in section 4, cleaner journeys, that the council will continue to reduce emissions from road-based travel, and that this could be through electric vehicle infrastructure. The council has quite rightly declared that we're in a climate emergency. Well, I think we need to act like we're in an emergency and take bold, decisive and fast action to tackle it. Transport emissions account for 36% of the borough's emissions. So my question is, what else will the council do to reduce transport emissions? And will you implement low traffic neighbourhoods in the borough, as well as school streets at every primary school, like Hackney Council has done? Thank you. Sorry, I know you've already touched on that. Sorry.
Thank you, Vanya. It's just I do know a Vinaya as well. So, thank you for certainly your questions. The council recognises the need to reduce transport emissions and is already working to do so. And we're currently implementing school streets. To date, I think, as I said, we've got 3 projects have been delivered and a further 10 are being delivered this financial year. So, we've another month in this particular year and 3 more months. So we will be working to get another 7 completed. And I know that officers are working at another 10 post that. And so, sorry, I'm just reading a message. Apologise if there is any audio issues out there. We're working to improve the cycling routes and facilitate cycling in the borough. The council's key priorities are certainly to add new cycling and walking routes, improve existing routes, enhance walking and cycling routes around schools in particular, and major bus routes as well. So, we are doing that, and we will be cooperating with TfL, London councils and other London boroughs on the dockless bike bylaws to increase access to bikes. I've asked many times, why can't we just have those bikes that we have in central London? Because if we're really serious, then we should be, if we can call ourselves a London borough, then we should be treated equally. And we certainly offer cycle training and have provided match funding to the Mayor's Walking and Cycling Grant for Muslim women's cycle groups to encourage Muslim women to take up cycling as well. And we offer a try before you bike scheme as well to encourage uptake of cycling, which allows residents certainly to trial a bike for a monthly fee and purchase it at a discounted price if they like it. We are working with schools and employers to reduce the travel by car, including travel plans, school travel plans, and provision of facilities such as cycle shelters. And certainly we're installing 2 mobility hubs, one in South Woodford and one in Wanstead. So there's a lot more to do. And I think what we have to do is start looking at engaging with the public to make sure that we deliver the low traffic neighbourhoods in a sustainable manner. And we will look at that as we go forward. Thank you, Vanya.
Thanks.
And next we have Jill James making a statement again on climate change corporate panel report. Jill, the floor's all yours.
Yes, thank you. I have been a veteran cycling campaigner over many years, so I'd like to talk about cleaner journeys. I'd like to echo what Vanya said, of course, about the enormous impact of private car use in this borough. And I have to say that this situation will not be solved by just expanding electric vehicle infrastructure, because electric vehicles are only part of the solution. For example, they don't solve the crisis in public health and obesity. They won't deal with road congestion. And there's lots of other points to be made. The need to educate residents on the relationship between emissions from car journeys and the air we breathe is very sadly illustrated by the recent Barkingside and Cranbrook Quiet Streets trial failure, when residents overwhelmingly objected to the lack of consultation for the implementation of the infrastructure. This infrastructure was meant to reduce traffic, pollution and accidents. So it's a great shame that people were not consulted beforehand, and I think this episode illustrates the need to consult before infrastructure is actually put in place. Can I say I also agree with Vanya that the School Streets Initiative is really, really important. And that we should continue to expand the School Streets Initiative to all the schools in the borough. She mentioned Hackney. Can I also mention Haringey, which has also just implemented their own school street project. We do, all of us, care about our children's health, regardless of which party we support. So I think it's important that not only do we make cleaner journeys something which we all work on in our private capacities, but also together as a community. And I would ask that all councillors override their party political differences to help achieve something that we all want, which is less traffic and cleaner air. So please support the climate report and take forward all the recommendations. If I could just add, regarding what Bernice Ruin said earlier about front gardens, I have to say that there are other boroughs that have managed to deal with this much more effectively. And I would ask you to look at the London Borough of Newham, which actually does not allow people to apply for permits to cross pavements at all. So there are things that can be done. Aldersbrook, where I live, has recently had the conservation area status implemented with the A406, sorry, the A406, the Section 406 agreement, that we have to apply for planning permission before we do anything like paving our front garden. So I wonder why that can't be extended to the whole of the borough, not just little Aldersbrook. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill. I think turning the A406 into a conservation area will solve all our problems very, very quickly. But I think, certainly I agree with what Vanya said, what Mrs. Butcher said, and what you're saying. I think educating residents is a real need, because I think the quiet streets or low traffic neighborhoods showed that people were fiercely against it. And I know that you mentioned consultation should have been done, greater consultation should have been done, more time should have been spent. But unfortunately, the council had to put everything down by the 30th of September, or it wasn't going to be done. And so we tried, because we all agreed that this is something we need to do. But then in the middle of a pandemic, having a fight with your own residents is not a wise move. This is something which we will look at in the future, and certainly consult, like we consult on all the other schemes, like residents parking schemes, or just generally parking schemes, like we did in Wanstead in 2017 and 2018. I think that's steamed from all the way up to 2014, and that's and certainly the Article 4 that you talk about in Newham, banning something across all highways, is something which, now that you mention it, I will sort of take forward, because it is something that we could potentially do. But in so many cases, it's like watching the horse drift off into the sunset, bolted, and then we're trying to close the gate. But better late than never. The school streets, I think it's certainly going to really help, because I certainly want to make sure that if it's 3 schools and then 10 schools and then 20 schools, and then we should be looking at getting all the schools into that particular work. And we have delivered a lot of environmental sort of education to a lot of our school children in 2019 onwards, and offered self-led forest and farm experiences at Hainault Forest as well, and held workshops on recycling and waste minimisation. So there's a lot of things that the council is doing, but obviously not all of that is known to everybody. But we are receiving the report today, and we will respond to the report in full as we go forward, assuming that the Cabinet agrees with it. So certainly thank you for your contribution. I'm now going to ask, is it Susanna who's next? I'm just looking at my sheet that's disappeared. Yeah, Susanna Knox.
Hi everyone. I want to echo the point on front gardens made by Mrs. Butcher and followed up by Jill. So like everybody else, I really welcome the Climate Change Corporate Panel report, and I think it's brilliant that it recommends that the council increases blue and green infrastructure. But when people think about green infrastructure, they tend to focus on parks. And yet, to gain the social benefits of access to nature, which include things like better physical and mental health and improved performance of children at school, it needs to happen on the streets and in the gardens where residents actually spend their lives, not just in parks that they occasionally visit and for many people never visit. So we know that a quarter of land in Greater London is garden land. I imagine it's possibly a higher proportion here in Redbridge. And we all know that over the past years, vast numbers of gardens have been paved over. To me, it seems completely mad that the council is now spending time and money on planting trees and greening up areas where residents have removed trees and greenery. It's completely nuts. And I know, as you've said, that national government does not make it easy for local councils to protect garden landscapes and doesn't provide, the legislation to do that. But equally, it's a fact that nature in Redbridge is dying out on this Cabinet's watch. And I think accepting the recommendations from the Climate Change Corporate Panel would create a moment in time to commit to finding innovative ways of protecting the remaining gardens, because although the horse has bolted, as you just said, actually there are still gardens left, and it would be, I think, a neglection of duty to allow those to go down the same route. I disagree that nothing could be done. I think, as Jill said, you could expand conservation areas where Article 4s can control development, and explore whether this legislation could be used far more widely than just architectural conservation areas. Why not establish new nature conservation areas, just as important for protecting the neighbourhood? You could either ban drop curbs like Newham or align to other boroughs by allowing them on much bigger plots. At the moment, you can park or get a drop curb to park on a tiny little area in Redbridge. In other councils, it's a much bigger space that you would need to have before you would be allowed to do that. Why not do something completely new and allow residents to rent a parking space outside their home rather than having to buy a drop curb in order to reserve the place that they want, or require residents to green up their gardens as part of your deal to provide street trees. Everyone's house price benefits from street trees, so it's nuts if if residents refuse to put any greenery in their gardens but expect the council to offer trees. So really my point was to highlight this big issue. I think it comes up constantly when you speak to people in the neighbourhood, and I'm asking you to work with those of us trying to protect nature to find more creative solutions and commit to stopping this tide of concrete that really is destroying what was once a green and very attractive suburban borough.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Susanna. I think we certainly are doing a lot to reverse some of the tide that's already been. But you're right. The residents always also has to do its bit or do their bit. And I know you say it would be nuts if they didn't, but sadly we have come across that we can do as much as we want, but residents are not actually interested in a lot of the cases. And certainly, as I said in my first answer, the planning authority, as a planning authority, there's not a lot we can do, but certainly the Article 4 that Jill mentioned, I think it's something we need to look at, and we need to sort of reflect on that and see if we can bring that into play. And in terms of smaller gardens being used as front drives and dropped curbs, a lot of these have over time, planning policy has changed, and certainly over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, there is a certain size limit that you have to actually have before you can park it. But that wasn't always there. So we are sort of also looking at some of the previous misdemeanors. And in terms of the greenness, I think, it's hard to argue with what you're saying, that we need to plant more trees, but we do need residents to do more on their sort of front gardens and back gardens as well. And in terms of conservation areas, we probably have some of them, probably the most in any borough. I will go and check this up as well, because the number of conservation areas we have is, we're one of the greenest boroughs with over 1,500 hectares of parkland. And so, we do want to do more, and we will do more. And, like we are in this time now where we need to actually look at the 800 sort of highway tree pits, which we adopted and planted trees in last year, created a community orchard in disused Pocket Park located at the bottom of George Lane in South Woodford, and certainly planted 25,000 trees across Redbridge. And we want to sort of partner with other organisations to sort of deliver sort of organic vegetable growing organisations as well. So I know both, we just need to do more, and we will do more. I mean, we hear you loud and clear. It's not as if, I have discovered green fingers over the lockdown as well, because not having anything else to do when the meeting's finished, we all got to do more, and we will certainly look at that. But thank you for your contribution. Thank you. And we have Kathy Taylor on climate change again. Kathy.
Kathy, you're on mute.
Thanks. I'd like to support the recommendations of the corporate panel on climate change, and I really want to urge the council to take up all the items. I've noticed that there are some, obviously, that are much higher cost than others, and I really urge the council not to sort of pick up the sort of low-hanging fruit, as it were, just to sort of think they can take up the cheaper ones, because of the any future costs will actually increase, because the council will have to try and mitigate the effects of poor air quality on health, falling biodiversity and such like. So I do urge the council to take up all those items. My other point was about the Quieter Street scheme, and people have already spoken on this, so just briefly want to say that I urge the council to learn from what happened in Barkingside, and to try and get examples of successfully implemented schemes in other parts of London, Europe, and learn from those and how to implement schemes like that. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think, like I said in the previous questions, there is a lot for us to do, and this is a moment in time. We need to grasp the mettle now, and this is sort of one of those watershed moments. We need to sort of take this report head on, and really sort of learn from what the report says, and then implement a lot of its easy wins, the low-hanging fruit straight away. And what we have to do is look at coming back to some of the things that are going to cost a lot more money, but that is something that we will do very, very soon, because generally it's two cabinet cycles that a report like this has to be referred back to cabinet again to see what the cabinet's going to do with it. But I think we're living in sort of special times at the moment, where I know there is the flu sort of vaccine that needs to be delivered. There's also the promise of the coronavirus vaccine, which hopefully will mean a Christmas present that has to be certainly. We need to vaccinate all our residents, and of course, with nearly £200 million wiped off the council's budget, there's a lot of priorities we need to look at. And this is something which we will sort of prioritise, and hence that's why we commissioned this report, this group, and there are some really good findings in that group and some really excellent sort of conclusions, and we need to take them on board. So we are listening to you, and I thank all 5 of you for coming on here and taking your time out to really sort of passionately put your case forward. Really appreciate that, and thank you, all of you, and Kathy in the end, for everything that you've stated, and we've got to work towards that. We've got our work cut out, but we will do our best, and we will certainly deliver. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. There were no agenda item 5. There were no references or comments from the committees. Agenda item 6 is the forward plan on pages 11 to 19 of the agenda. Is that agreed, please? And again, if you could raise your virtual hand. Thank you. That's agreed. Agenda item 7, budgetary control report for Q2. I know Councillor Rye's got some Wi-Fi problems, so I think he's going to keep his camera off. Councillor Rye.
Thank you, Leader. So this is the budget monitoring report for Q2 for the 2020 budget. What it shows is that the revenue position is showing a forecast of a £10.449 million overspend. So that's not money that we've spent right now, but that's what we're forecasting to be at the end of the year if things continue as they are and they continue with the pressures that we have. The actual total forecast variance within the services is just over 62.8 million, of which 55.7 million is in relation to the impact of COVID. And the work that we've done throughout the year, which has been a long year, but the work that's been carried out by the council and the impact of COVID throughout the whole year and what we expect it to be by the end of the financial year. Monthly, we're having to put in returns to MHCLG to explain, what the impact is, what the changes have been on the previous month in terms of our services and the income that we're receiving. Of that forecast, 52.4 million has been offset by underspends within the corporate items, including 26 million, just under 26 million of government grants, and some further corporate underspends, for example, on our capital programme. We did receive a final grant a couple of weeks ago, well, not final grant, final that we understand it to be, but we may receive further grants of 3.8 million. Of which, as you know, Leader, I was disappointed with the result. It was a rather small amount compared to lots of our neighbouring boroughs, some of them which received 2, 3 and 4 times that amount in that previous settlement. I just think, as we've discovered, is a poorly put together algorithm or formula that they used that has meant that Redbridge has been, I believe, poorly served in that last funding round. In terms of our savings, we've delivered, and we've got 53.7% of our savings considered to be in the red area and another 14% in amber. Effectively, that's been the impact of this year's pandemic. As everyone's minds and efforts have been focused towards responding to COVID, it has meant that things such as savings have not had the time to be delivered. So many of them will be delivered in the forthcoming year, in the next financial year, but we do not expect the whole of that savings schedule to be delivered in this financial year. Within that, you'll see the different directorates, how their individual overspends are faring, so where they're coming from. So you see communities is forecasting 22 million as an overspend, and people at 34.4 million, and seeing the rest of it through regeneration culture at just over 3.6 million, and with strategy at 2.6 million. As I said, most of a large amount of this has been mitigated against through some of the grants that we've had and our own corporate underspends, and we expect to close the gap by the end of the financial year. We do have mitigation plans within this report for each of the savings areas, and directors have prepared plans in relation to the 2021 variances that we identified in the first quarter of this year. As I explained in the savings, we've just got just over half that are classified as red, and you'll see that in the table within the report that explains how many have been delivered. How many have been delivered. In terms of the capital programme, you're seeing that there is slippage in the capital programme with just over £194 million, which is being reprioritised. So effectively, what that means is, 154 million, they are being slipped into later years. So the projects are still expected to be delivered, but the funding and the cost of it for this year is being moved to the next financial year. And I commend the report to colleagues.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Rai, anyone? Okay. Are the recommendations on pages 20 and 21 of the agenda agreed? And can you show your virtual hands, please? Thank you. That's everyone. If you could put your hands down. And now we turn to the Treasury Management Mid-Year Review. Again, Councillor Rai. Thank you,
Leader. So this is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. So this report provides a mid-year review of the Council's Treasury activities, which have been undertaken in line with our Treasury Management Strategy and our prudential indicators approved by the Council on the 27th of February. What you will already know, later, is that the base rate, the bank rate, in response to the COVID pandemic, has reduced first to 0.25% and then to 0.1% by the Bank of England, and it remains unchanged at the time of this report. The PWLB rates, the Public Works and Loan Board, where we borrow a lot of our money through, initially saw a spike at the beginning of the pandemic, but rates have fallen since there's been huge quantitative easing by the government. Market forecasts for January are saying there'll be a general increase over the next 2 years, or a gradual increase over the next 2 years. But there's also been a consultation undertaken by the Treasury that the margin, so if you recall, Leader, last year we had a 1% premium put onto our borrowing by the government. So essentially all of our borrowing that we wanted to take on board from approximately last September, arbitrarily the government added 1% on that borrowing cost, and they are taking a consultation at the moment to see if they'll remove that 1% premium. Fortunately, at the same time, we, as you see in the report as well, did put together a bond that we released last year, and the borrowing rate on that bond was 1.88%, which compares favourably to the cost of borrowing, our average cost of borrowing of 2.72. what you'll see in terms of the borrowing is that we have a revised capital program of 194 million, a borrowing requirement in addition to the above of 5 million of the PWLB debts that are going to mature during this year, plus 20 million of old LOBO loans that could be subject to refinancing if the people that we've lent from or borrowed from choose to exercise that option. The investments the council have, so for example, as you know, we have a 20 million that we invested in a CCLA bond, which was invested in a property fund. That still continues to realise a return of 4.26%, which is 3.26 net, and that income is being used to be used in our services and refinancing and bringing into our revenue fund. That fund has seen a drop, as of most funds this year, but we expect that to recover over the long term, and the fund is planned to be held for at least the next 5 to 10 years. The Treasury management has been carried out amongst and in line with our prudential indicators and our council's MRP policy, which was approved on the 27th of February of this year. And I commend the report to colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Rai. Are the recommendations on page 91 of the agenda agreed, please? If you can again show your virtual hand. Thank you. If you can put them down again, please. Agenda item 9 is the digital and customer experience strategy. Councillor Coombe.
Right, thank you very much for that. This strategy outlines the vision and ambition of the council in setting out how digital technology can and will be used to support, enable and enhance our customers' experience. And obviously when we say customers, we're residents. So we've got 4 themes outlined in this, which are pivotal in ensuring that the council uses digital changes to deliver more efficient services. So we need to improve the customer experience, to increase opportunities through innovation, collaboration and the use of open data, and to relentlessly focus on the digital inclusion, poverty and digital resilience, and also develop the infrastructure and connectivity needed to support the work that goes forward from this. So when we talk about digital inclusion, poverty, digital resilience, a lot of work is being done in the background with different partners across the authority, not just within the council itself, but other streams, because it's not just about somebody who finds it difficult to use the technology, but it's about, as we've seen with schools and the lack of equipment that some pupils have, not just lack of equipment, but lack of data, lack of places to work, maybe there's nobody at home to help them. It's all this sort of thing. So it's a really wide-ranging look at what actually digital inclusion really means and what digital resilience also means as well. And despite all our talk of everything digital, we're not moving away from our telephone customer service either, because there will always need to be more than one channel. But we're just going to try and make the digital experience as easy as possible and as efficient as possible, so that as many people that can use it do use it when they need to. So I would just actually commend this report to colleagues.
Thank you. Can I ask if the recommendations on page 118 of the agenda are agreed? Virtual hand again, please. Thank you. That is everyone. You put your hands down. And then we come to the climate change corporate panel report, which we are considering tonight. Which is me Okay. We have Councillor Jones, who's going to present this report. Councillor Jones, are you here, sir?
He's not present, Councillor Athwell.
Okay. Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to welcome this report. I think the 5 speakers who spoke very eloquently earlier, and I want to thank the panel for their work, and certainly the public who got involved. I think it's a really important piece of work. And I know we've identified, as they say, 15 shovel-ready projects, and are working with London councils to identify additional funding to support the work in built environment, transport and public realm, and other green sort of spaces. And we'll be doing that relentlessly over the coming few years. And we've certainly taken on and already undertaken a lot of good work to reduce the emissions. You know, I'll give you some examples. Rolled out the LED street lighting across the borough, which has reduced the annual emissions by 71%. Prioritised energy efficiency in our buildings, a maintenance programme which included installing energy efficient lighting in Leigh Street Depot, Redbridge Drama Centre, South Park Primary School, Fulwell Cross Leisure Centre, and Sylvan Road multi-storey car park, reducing energy usage and cost, and by avoiding over 160 tonnes of CO2 emissions. Certainly, we've reduced the council's own building carbon emissions by 9% through improved building insulation, upgrading the inefficient boilers, and replacement of older, less efficient air conditioning units as well. Incorporated policies in Redbridge Local Plan, which is 2015 to 2030, that limit carbon emissions in new developments, support retrofitting of existing building stock to improve energy performance, and ensure developments are constructed in accessible locations to reduce travel and promote transport. Installed solar electricity panels on a number of schools and buildings across the borough, generating so much extra energy for free. And certainly this energy was used to supply local schools and council housing. And Cleaner Journeys started a fleet conversion programme to ensure we're ULEZ compliant, provided electric pool cars and pool bikes for staff to use at Linton House and the depot, introduced workplace travel programme that reduced business travel, and we require all major developments applications to be accompanied by a travel plan, including measures to actively reduce the use of private car. Started rolling out a range of electric vehicle charging points, delivered 3 school streets, with a further 10 to be delivered later this year, and another 10 in the pipeline the following year. Started developing mobility hubs. So there's a lot of things going on. I could go on and on and on, because there is a lot of things, you know, and we've got the biodiversity already started addressing this issue, and certainly have started on a number of tree planting projects, including partnering with trees for cities to deliver extensive tree planting programs, and working with student-led climate emergency committee at Woodbridge High School to plant further 100 trees on school grounds and bee-friendly spring bulbs. So, you know, having over 800 highway tree pits adopted in the past year, creating community orchards in disused pocket parks, undertaking work to secure further capital to plant an additional 5,000 trees across the borough. So basically, there's a lot of things going on, and the report picks on some lot of good things to come in the future. As one of the speakers earlier on said, you know, please don't take this down, take the low-hanging fruit and leave everything else. take the low-hanging fruit and leave everything else and not take it. What we want to do is, as the recommendations suggest, that we note the development of the Climate Crisis Corporate Panel report, and we thank the panel for their work, and we agree that officers develop a 3-year plan to take into account the feasibility, key milestones, monitoring, budget implications, so we can actually do the work to tackle the climate crisis, and we will certainly have the report back. I'd like to say 2 cycles, but I think, as I said earlier, because of COVID-19, it's safer to say spring 2021. And if we say that, because if it gets delayed, it's okay. And certainly, and we note that the council will continue to actively address the climate crisis in all its work going forward. So, we will take this as seriously as we possibly can, funds permitting, but we will take this head on. And I know, I think there's further requests in one of the local forums. Can we use a lot of our sort of green space, and can we create the biodiversity sort of bee corridor across Redbridge? And we will look into all those things, perhaps trying to get 10% of our green spaces, if we can use that for other issues which we can really help with. And I know Councillor Jones is here, and I certainly want to thank him for chairing this panel. Councillor Jones, I don't know if you wanted to say a word or two, but we certainly thank the good work that your committee's done. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
That's fine. Thank you, Jazz. I'd just like to reiterate, just to thank all of the members that have worked very hard with all the recommendations. We did look at quite a lot of topics, and we'd listened to various organisations, people coming from voluntary organisations across London. We had lots of guest speakers and academics, and it was pretty heavy going, but we managed to crystallise those into quite good recommendations, and I look forward to the council implementing those in the future. And I'm sure this isn't the end of the story, and I think this is a pressing issue that affects all of us. So I look forward to working with the council and the members into implementing these recommendations, and I think it's quite exciting work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We appreciate the hard work. Certainly you and the committee put into it, the officers and the public. It's a very detailed piece of work, and we will certainly respond to that in due time. Can I ask if the recommendations on page 154 are agreed? I wonder if you could show that with your virtual hand again. Thank you. You may put them down again. Okay, we come to the COVID-19 emergency decisions, which is to be considered tonight. I wonder if I could ask the Chief Executive, Mr. Donald, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So this report should be familiar to Cabinet members in terms of format. It sets out the decisions that have been made under emergency powers by myself in respect of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. There are 3 decisions covered in the report, covering the period from the 30th of September until the 22nd of October this year. The first of those was a decision to locate the 3rd testing site in the borough at Charteris Road in Woodford. The second sets out the arrangements for the administration and payment of the self-isolation grants, £500 self-isolation grants, which people are entitled to should they have to self-isolate and have a loss of income. And that is the only one with a financial implication, whereby the government gave the council a grant of £16,000 for those grants. And the third one, which is now redundant, is a decision around the engage, explain, encourage and enforce plan for the move to Tier 2. So I'll leave it at that, Leader, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions, please? In which case, are the recommendations on page 198. Are they agreed? If you can put your virtual hand up, please. Thank you. And that was the final report. There is no urgent statement. The date of the next meeting is 15th of December. Thank you very much for joining in today, and stay safe out there, please. Thank you. Bye-bye.